All right, we're off and running on a Wednesday, bright and early. Welcome to the Krug Show meets the Guy Haberman extravaganza. Hope everybody's having a great early morning Wednesday. It's not often that you see me get out of the rack this early. That's how important this live stream is. As Guy Haberman joins the mix the day before the Niners get it rolling down in Santa Clara for rookie mini camp. Guy, bright and early. How are you, man?
I don't think you're being passive aggressive, Larry, but yes, it is bright and early. I appreciate that every time you text and say, you want to do something on Wednesday? And I say, can you do 7:30? You don't hesitate. You say yes, even though, I know you prefer to be racked at this point, like Jim Rome. But good to see you.
Well, you know what this guarantees, early, and it guarantees that I will not be late for my, Damon live stream at 8:45, which I'm usually customarily late chasing from behind. But now I will be up. I might go for a jog around the neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
I got a new bike the other day. Maybe I'll take it out on the trail and just start pedaling.
Oh, road bike, electric bike.
Well,
man-powered bike.
I had some bikes that my parents left me. They're old like cruisers. So my wife and I have been going on those cruisers, but they're heavy. I mean, they got the huge, thick tires, and there's no gears.
Yeah,
and it's okay, but it's not great. And they're kind of stiff. So I took them down to Play It Again Sports in Concord, which is an awesome thing. And they bought my two used bikes, gave me a store credit, and then I turned around and bought another bike. So now I'm kind of got like a more of a 10-speed with a little thinner tires, a little bit easier to get around town, not so heavy.
Cruiser looks great. Cruiser looks cool.
Yeah,
but in practice, it's a bit more of a challenge.
It's a heavy bike. It's a heavy bike, and if you're going downhill, it's awesome. When you're going uphill, oh my gosh!
In a single gear.
Yeah, it's a grind. It's a grind. So,
all right.
So I don't know. I've discovered the trails out here in Walnut Creek. You can bike from Walnut Creek to Pleasant Hill, from Walnut Creek to Pleasanton. You can go pretty much in any direction. Lafayette, any direction you want to go on the bike trail, you can go. So
what's your philosophy on stop signs as a cyclist? Do you use them or fly right through? I own the road.
On the trail, you just keep rolling.
I understand. On the residential roads, do you respect the right of way or?
I do. Because I also don't wear helmets. I'm not a helmet. I was born in 1970. I mean, if I can't wear a helmet. It's like I had a big wheel. I probably got hit by a car at least 3 times. I can't.
Explains a lot.
Yeah, I can't wear the helmet. But I am excited for rookie minicamp because not only do you draft day is great, but this is draft day is like, you see all the presents there around the tree and you get to open them. But rookie minicamp is when you actually get to see what they look like and, actually play with your new basketball or, take your baseball glove out there and loosen it up a little bit. So
I mean, as a Jewish kid, Christmas Day, the opening of the presents was not interesting to me. Getting to play with the neighbors' toys was interesting to me. So you're right that the analogy holds. Minicamp is better than the draft.
Yes.
I did get a little jealous, honestly, watching like all these Xavier Worthy clips. Not all these. I've seen there's 3 clips from Xavier Worthy at Chiefs camp that have been played over and over. And one was a drop, one's like a go ball. And it's fun to see guys in those uniforms. I have to look at. I like a good jersey swap, it's one thing that's been interesting to me, Larry. Since I know I do this. I start talking before you get your sponsors in, but
that's all right.
So I'll just make this quick point, and then we can actually get started. We always talk about like a player's stock post-season, going into the combine, and then like after the combine and their pro days. I think in my unofficial kind of testing of the wind, Jacob Cowing's stock has gone up since the 49ers drafted him. It feels like more than any other guy the Niners drafted, right? Like the Niners got him, and then everyone has started talking about how much they like Jacob Cowing. And people were talking about liking Jacob Cowing ahead of time, you and me included. But he does seem to be a guy that after the draft happens, you can kind of start to dust off who settled where and start to just kind of look at some fits. And he seems to be one. But I'll stop there, and you can fill out your
No, I think you're totally right. In fact, I was saying yesterday that I watched a Steve Smith, YouTube video that went on for about a half hour, talking about Cowing and his release and his strength and his route running and all these nuances that kind of show that he's kind of an advanced player in certain capacities. And Steve Smith, who kind of was Cowing, right? I mean, he was an electric 5'9" guy. This guy's an electric 5'8" guy. But I mean, it's basically they're very similar in some capacities. He loved him. He absolutely loved him. Now, I love him too. I think Scott McLuhan said that he was his favorite pick of the Niners. It's just that to me, it's like, when do you really, there's times when people show up at minicamp and the coaches get there and they're like, what? We drafted this guy?
Yeah.
I mean, and this is the coach's first look at these players in their facility, in their, environment with other players around. And sometimes you can be very underwhelming, and sometimes it can be, not overwhelming, but like, wow, like, look, we just added Jerry freaking Rice.
Right.
You know what I mean? Look at this guy. And to me, it's that subsection, and I've talked about it. It's like, I think teams make mistakes when they overvalue the combine and don't scout off the college film as much. To me, when you start with the college film and you find out after watching the film and looking at all the numbers, who's been the productive players at the collegiate level, and then you cross compare that with who goes to the combine and shows that they're a futuristic NFL caliber athlete, and maybe even a high-end NFL caliber athlete, those things have an intersection, and the intersection are the players that you want. And that's what Cowing represents to me. This guy was incredibly productive at UTEP, and then he was incredibly productive with the Arizona Wildcats. And he was one of the reasons Arizona upset Oklahoma in the bowl game and looked so good last year at times. And he then goes to the combine and runs 4.38 and shows that he's got big time speed and athleticism. And I think when you get those guys on the field in minicamp and you're like, wait a second, this guy knows how to play, and this guy's high-end NFL athleticism, we got something here. And to me, like, that's when you got like an Aldon Smith. I remember when I saw Aldon Smith the first time at camp with the Niners, I was like, wow. And then I looked up his bio, and sure enough, he was very, very productive at Missouri. And then you looked at him in camp and you're like, this guy's got ridiculous long arms and power and strength and speed. I mean, it's so if you go for collegiate production and ignore the athletes, a lot of times in minicamp, you're underwhelmed because you're like, this guy doesn't look like he's going to be able to do much on our level. You know what I mean? And then if you go for athletes, but you don't go for collegiate production, then you're like, God, this guy is super athletic and fast, but he can't catch a cold, or he can't do what he's on either side of the ball. He's just not playing the game right. And then when you get that guy who's both, then you've hit. And I think that's what Cowing is. And maybe not just Cowing. I think Mustafa might be that as well. I'm eager to see him on Friday.
To me, it's like a coach's first chance to really see, is this guy helping us now, or is he going to mean more work after practice for me? Right? Is this a developmental player, or is this a player that I know I can assign an assignment to? And none of the veterans going to look at me and go like, why is this guy getting a chance? Right? He belongs. And I think what we'll see in the next few months is that Jacob Cowing and Ricky Pearsall are much more advanced players when they arrive, quote unquote, on campus than Danny Gray was. And, I think Danny Gray gets dragged into this conversation a lot, maybe a little unfairly, but not unfairly, because there's only so many roster spots. And to me, that spot, his spot, the spot that Jacob Cowing wants, is going to be one of the most, maybe not necessarily the most interesting thing this weekend, but when we really get to having the whole team together and you really get to see the rookies next to the vets, you get to see Cowing run a route right after Aiyuk does. I think it's going to get very interesting then.
Well, we're off and running on a Wednesday. Of course, the Krug Show brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville and Corte Madera, and they're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out, and they do run out. So go say hi to Damon and Mary. Tell them the Krug sent you. I get all kinds of texts and emails literally every day. I'm here at Pig and a Pickle in Corte Madera. Krug, I'm walking into Pig and a Pickle. I'm in Emeryville. You're right. I'm in from out of town, and I had to try Pig and a Pickle, and I'm here. So go tell Damon and Mary that Krug sent you and enjoy some amazing barbecue. We're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Check the link in the description. Use that promo code Krug, K-R-U-E-G, and they'll match you up to your first $100. And also thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles along the Monterey Peninsula. And did I mute myself there?
Oh, I thought it was me. Yeah.
No, it was me. But I don't know if you got the number. Call Anthony Catania, 831-521-5264, Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. And Guy, do you have a sponsor you want to throw out? You want to
all my sponsors are on the podcast, and I'm giving out no bonus spots today.
No bonus spots. Look at you. You're a businessman to the very end. All right. Who now that we've had a couple weeks to kind of digest the entire draft thing, because there's also the undrafted guys, and then you start looking at guys, and there's articles written in every camp. Hey, this guy looked good at the rookie mini camp. By the way, you mentioned Xavier Worthy. I read last night that Mahomes, that was a Mahomes pick. That Mahomes demanded Xavier Worthy.
Interesting.
And that Andy Reid and Brett Veach kind of acquiesced. I mean, how could you not, right? The guy's won as many Super Bowls as Mahomes has won. If he says he wants Xavier Worthy, and you're looking at receivers, you almost got to go with your quarterback.
He watches a lot of college football. I did a Texas Tech game last year, and the Texas Tech offensive coordinator is very tight with Mahomes. I think he was the QB coach when Patrick was there, and said Patrick texts him all the time about college football. So my guess is Mahomes. We'd have to go look at what happened, what Worthy did in the Texas Tech game this year. I think it was the last game of the year, regular season. Mahomes doesn't just watch the cut-ups. I think Mahomes, my guess is he watched a couple Worthy. Texas played obviously all the way to the national semifinal. So my guess is he watched a lot of games of Worthy. Did not just watch cut-ups. Did not just watch a combine. Look at combine numbers. My guess is he watched a lot of games.
And, I think he loves what Worthy represents. Worthy to him, I mean, first of all, Mahomes is a genius. I mean, as a football genius. I mean, he really is. He understands what Worthy represents. And it's we could even debate this. It's what's more valuable, what Worthy represents or what Pearsall represents? And I guess it's about fit, but he's looking at Kelsey and Pacheco and Rashee Rice when he gets done with his legal troubles. And he's looking at Worthy running off the coverage and creating all that space. I mean, that's what Xavier Worthy at his core truly is. He's a go pattern monster who creates a ton of space underneath for all your underneath stuff.
Yeah.
And that includes Patrick's running. So, he'll take a few less hits because of Xavier Worthy, because he's going to draw the defense further down the field. And so I think that's what he represents. But what do you think's more valuable? The Niners, on the other hand, took Pearsall, who is your continuity piece, great hands, middle of the field. He's going to work back to the quarterback. He's going to make all these 3rd and 5 Puka Nacua type catches. And in theory, if it works out, he'll be a very hard receiver to stop, even if you know that Purdy's going to him.
Yeah.
So it's who's more valuable to your team? I guess it's based on the rest of the receivers and how they complement one another.
I also think it's a good thing to say, Mahomes loved this guy, as if Andy Reid wasn't going to draft him anyway.
Right.
Andy, Pat, you like this guy? Yeah, I love this guy. Okay, great. Well, we're drafting him anyway.
As they're handing the card in, they pass it to Mahomes. Do you like that name? Yeah, I do like that name.
Approval.
Mahomes loved Worthy,
Correct me if I'm wrong, Larry. I think the next over-the-top go ball that the Niners hit will be the first non-Sam Darnold to Ronnie Bell go ball they've hit in over a year. I mean, they threw that one in the preseason last year.
They threw one to Kittle in the second half of Jacksonville down the sideline against Devin Lloyd.
Yeah,
tight ends. It wasn't a go ball. It was a tight end wheel route.
I'm talking about one-on-one receiver versus DB, run straight, run by the guy, throw it over the top.
Danny Gray. Trey Lance to Danny Gray.
Exactly. And it's just not, the Chiefs, I love all these stats where you see Mahomes' average depth of target is 32nd, right? And the Niners hit more explosives than anybody. And those statistics are true, but we know they happen in different ways. And it's fine. The Niners are more of a doubles team than a home run team. The Chiefs are, the Seahawks, like DK Metcalf, AJ. These are home run hitters. It's funny. The Niners are kind of tough to pin down because they have superstar players that are superstar players. They're not just statistical superstars. They're true on the field superstar players. But they're not. They hit different types of home runs, like they're triples and doubles, and
right.
It's just a little different. So I think Ricky fits. I think he fits better on the Niners. He'd have fit on the Chiefs, but I think he fits better on the Niners than Xavier Worthy would have fit on the Niners for sure.
Yeah. I know we want to get to a little bit of Aiyuk and Debo talk, and I definitely want to hit that. But I thought, Kyle Madsen, right?
Yep.
Former 95.7 The Game producer.
I think he was gone. I was gone by the time he got there, but I do know him. Yes.
Yeah, he's a good dude. He writes now for Niner Wire, and he works hard. He's doing some radio.
Him and Biederman do a podcast.
They do. Okay, I haven't caught his podcast with Biederman, though I do like Biederman too. But he writes for Niner Noise, which is a Niner entity, kind of like Niners Nation or 49er Web Zone or whatever. And these sites do a nice job. And if you're a Niner fan, I'm sure you've all seen these sites. Anyway, Madsen's got an article up that I think is really interesting. And he just talks about, and it's like, there's one part of me that's a little uncomfortable when I look at the Niners as far as making any kind of prediction of what they're going to be. And I couldn't put my finger on what exactly makes me uncomfortable about handicapping how good they are. And it's the 22 draft. And he's talking about there's 6 guys from that 22 draft. Danny Gray, Kalia Davis, Drake Jackson, Spencer Burford, Samuel Womack, and what's the Brock Purdy's roommate? Zakel, Nick Zakel. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, those 6 guys. So those 6 guys, Gray was a third. Drake was a second. Burford was a fourth. They and all these guys are kind of in that mode of Gray has got 1 catch in his career. Kalia Davis is, big and fast and looks awesome in practice and has never established himself. Drake had 3 sacks against the Steelers last year. It looked like he was headed for a banner year, and then it just all evaporated, and then he got hurt and he was done for the year. And you get the sense that there's some disappointment about what he's produced. Burford regressed in year 2, but he started in year 1. Womack looked really, really, really good, like as good as Lenore, I thought, in training camp last year, only to totally evaporate as the season went on, and he was inactive for all the playoff games. And Zakel has never gotten a sniff. And I don't know if he's a guard, a center, a tackle. He was a tackle in college. But those 6 guys, and I'm just kind of wondering what you think of those 6 guys. Are the Niners 0 for 6 there? Or is of those 6 guys, who do you have the most hope actually has another chapter, finds another level, realizes their potential? Gray's got huge speed. Kalia Davis is an interior pass rusher that's got talent. Drake's got talent. Burford, in some ways, is the prototype physically for what you're looking for in a guard. Womack, to me, looked like he was close to a couple pick sixes 2 years ago. And Zakel is, on paper, a great prospect. He's big, he's long, he's versatile, he's tough, he's smart, but he hasn't played. So of those 6 guys, if you're telling me they go 0 for 6, then I don't feel as good about the Niners. If you're telling me that 2 of those guys emerge as significant, contributors, now I feel better. If there's anything, if it's 3, 4, 5, or all 6, I feel really good. So where are you on those 22 draft choices?
2 things. 1, I think you'd have to say Burford. He's the only one that plays.
Right.
2,
Womack used to play. I don't know what happened there.
2, they it affects them in 2025 more than it affects them in 2024. More than it affects them this year, it affects them in 2 seasons. So, I mean, it's a significant thing. Now, they can course correct for 25 if they hit, if they make up the difference with this class, or if Jair Brown establishes himself as truly a reliable playmaking starting safety in the NFL out of the 23 class, So, I mean, that might be an empty class. It really might be. I was hopeful for Drake Jackson. That was the guy I was hopeful out of that group.
I mean, he's a great guy to talk to, and he wants it. It's not for lack of desire. It's just he hasn't been able to build up enough strength.
Yeah, well, I mean, he ran out of gas his rookie year, understandably, and he had so many different, positions in college that he needed time. And look, they have signed past him. They've really emphasized again what they always emphasize: their defensive line, not just starters at defensive line, but depth at defensive line. It's going to be harder this year, maybe for him, even if he's a better player than it was his rookie year, where he had more opportunity. Right? He had more opportunity slated 2 years ago than he has guaranteed opportunity this year. It just passes you by quickly when you're on a team trying to win a championship. So the Niners have not waited for Drake Jackson. They have signed other players around him, drafted other players around him, but signed other players around him mostly. And, I think that they had to, because they're trying to win in 2024. So, I think it's a concern. It'd be great to have had a linebacker or a pass rusher or whatever out of that class, a starting right guard where you don't need to rotate John Feliciano at right guard. Would have been great. But I think when you look at the Niners' moves, mostly they have signed players. They have built this team as if they are not holding their breath and waiting on the class of 2022 any longer. They can't afford to. And hopefully for them in 2025, the class of 23 and 24 will have made up the gap. But at this point, that is a lost draft. I mean, there's, if you get one guy, if you tell me this, Larry, that in 2025, one of the guys you just mentioned is starting for the 49ers, at this point, I think you'd have to take it, because only one of them currently starts and plays half the snaps, and that's Burford. So it feels like a lost draft at this point. They've drafted receivers over Danny Gray. So I don't think they're holding their breath with that group, and I don't think anybody else should be either. I move on. Mistakes.
Well, I know it might be a total zero type situation. Danny Gray is probably going to do everything he can to salvage his career this summer, so we'll see. But I don't have a lot of confidence that, that he's got the toughness to be able to take the kind of hits that the NFL brings you on a weekly basis. Kalia Davis, I think, has got a troublesome knee and doesn't really play with leverage against the run, so he's kind of a situational rusher at best. He'll be fighting like a absolute dog for his spot this summer because, as you said, they've added other guys and they're no longer on scholarship, these players. Drake, I do have hope for that he still can contribute something, and I do have hope for Womack because I really think Womack's got a lot of talent and could play right away and will play right away. And he'll play in the NFL for a long period of time because corners are hard to find. He can cover. Zakelj and Burford, I don't know what to think of these offensive linemen. I mean, Zakelj has never been able to get on the field. He seems like when he does, he's too slow. Burford regressed significantly last year, and I'm not sure why. So, yeah, I guess if I was looking at these 6 guys, even though Burford on paper looks like he's the closest to, regular snaps and that kind of thing, I would say Womack would be the guy that I have the most confidence in being good. Drake would be the second guy, and I think Burford might be number 3.
Okay.
But I like Drake. I do like Drake a lot, and I think that he's flashed some really good stuff, right? He
Sure.
bats down passes. He can play inside. He's got greater strength at the point of attack as a run defender in some ways. But he's just got to
Physically, he
put it
has
all
the
together.
tools.
Yeah, I mean, and he's he bats down passes. He's got some nice things there, but defensive line more than some of the other positions is a technique rich position, and that's why guys have success late in their career and they hang around and they can sack the quarterback. Drake's in that early stage where he's got some of the physical gifts, but he doesn't have a lot of the technique. And now he needs to get coached up and he needs to get in better shape and stronger and put it all together. So huge summer for all 6 of those guys. All right, let's talk about the wide receivers. There have been a couple different reports around the wide receivers. One that was the Niners really decided 2 hours, like 2:00 in the afternoon on Friday of the draft before round 2, that they weren't going to trade Debo Samuel. That story came out this week. And then there was one on Aiyuk as well that, basically the Niners wanted a mid-first round pick and then some. And, the combination of having to satisfy the 49ers as far as that level of compensation and then turn around and satisfy Aiyuk in a contract kind of prevented him from being moved. What was your thoughts when you saw those 2 stories this week?
Yeah, I mean, duh was my first thought. Like, yeah, it was Jeremy Fowler that wrote the Niners discussed Debo on day 2 of the draft. A source said definitively 2 hours before the second round, San Francisco isn't moving him. And then Rap Sheet also added to the Aiyuk report you referenced was from Fowler. Rap Sheet again added to it yesterday. Doesn't seem like a trade is in the cards, at least not right now. It never made sense to trade Aiyuk for anything other than a big overpay. The one I wanted to get your opinion, I don't think you and I have talked about Debo. And my question is this: what do you make of that? It seems to me that the risk between letting Debo rumors get out as they did for 2 days and the likelihood that you actually get anything of value for Debo, the gap between those 2 things is massive. I don't understand the motivation for the 49ers to, and maybe they don't want it out, but that's my question. Did they want it out? Did they have any reason that you can think of Debo loafed on a crossing route in the Super Bowl? Did they have any reason to make this public information? Because I just have a really, really hard time. First of all, they don't need the money this year. I have a really hard time seeing how anybody would have thought that they'd get anything close to value for Debo Samuel. So do you think, A, they thought they could get some value for Debo? B, do they like him as a guy, but they would have taken 85 cents on the dollar for him? Or C, are they trying to send him a message? Or D, something else?
Well, I mean, I guess there's 2, there's everything that becomes public. Some of it is because you want it out there, and some of it is just because it got out there, right? I mean, don't you think that it potentially could have gone to some of these reporters through other sources? I mean, yeah, the Niners could have been more stealth or more, demanding of the teams that they were talking to not say anything. But how much do teams pay attention to other teams' wants and desires like that? Like,
so you think the 49ers actually shopped Debo,
and maybe word got out from the other side.
So then the question is, what did they think they were getting for Debo Samuel?
Well, that's what I was going to say this about Debo. He's very much a beauty in the eye of the beholder. I mean, if you take Debo's, greatest moments and the Niners' greatest moments, people watched that Eagles-Niners game was the highest rated game of the year. Everybody saw him go off and take off in that game. He's a tone-setting player also, and he's also a kind of a one of one. So it's like if you like the Debo player, yeah, you could go be like the Jets and draft Malachi Corley, but there aren't a whole lot of guys like that. So if you're one of these teams that has a quarterback that you don't trust, I mean, Debo's like the perfect receiver for the team that has a quarterback that they don't really quite trust. Maybe he's too young. Maybe he's not good enough. Maybe he folds in certain situations because he's your wide receiver. He's your wide back. He's your handed off guy. He's your 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, easy completion guy. He's your hitch screen guy. He's your tunnel screen guy. So, I mean, he's your end around guy. So it's like, in some ways, I think they put him out there just to see, is there somebody who's like deeply in love with Debo that would overpay for a guy who is expensive and has injuries and is of less value every day. So I think they were just floating to see what. I think it was a combo probably. If they put it out there and wanted it out there, then maybe they're trying to send him a message. He was either hurt or out of shape at the end of the year. I mean, I think he was hurt because he left the Green Bay game.
I think it was hurt.
And I saw him taking his pads off after one of the games, or after one of the practices after that, and he just looked like he was in pain trying to raise his shoulder up. So I think there was a lot of pain in that shoulder. I don't know what it was: rotator cuff, labrum. I have no idea what the shoulder, bone bruise, fracture. He had it all, but so I think he was not 100% in the Super Bowl, and people are judging him harshly. But I think they also maybe wanted to send him a message and also motivate him to be like, hey, you know what? It's this is the business side of things that's coming. And also, dangling the carrot because they're hoping that he has a big year. And also maybe seeing if there was some team out there that's like, I gotta have that piece. And obviously there wasn't that team out there.
My conclusion is what you just said, that they were okay with it getting out because look, Debo was not really available, but they knew 2 years ago when he was 2 years younger and without a contract, if anybody was interested, right? Jeff Darlington reported Debo asked for a trade. Surely somebody called the Niners. What would it take to get Debo?
There's a lot of talk the Ravens have interest. I mean, these teams that love diversified rushing attacks would love him.
I just think they had to have been okay with it getting out, because to even have the conversation takes a major leap of faith from them. You got to be very skeptical when anybody calls, hey, you want to talk about Debo? Yes, let's talk about Debo. You're crazy if you think someone's about to offer you a first or a high second round pick for him. So I think they had to be okay with some level of it getting out. The other side of it is this is one of the contenders for a Super Bowl, one of the top contenders to win a championship. You got to know, like, if other teams can leak something that could disrupt your locker room and derail your championship hopes, they may do that, right? So none of it really matters if Debo shows up ready to go to battle, right? If it's not a disruption in the locker room, that both Brandon Aiyuk and Debo Samuel thought at some point this year they might be on another team. That's fine then.
It's really kind of an amazing story when you think about a team inside their Super Bowl window are talking about moving their two perimeter superstars, or at least stars, inside their Super Bowl window, as they're trying to get the thing done, and they haven't done it yet.
With a cheap young quarterback.
Right. And then you draft, a couple of young receivers that look like they're going to add to that mix and maybe take some snaps away, maybe not. We'll see. The one conversation I definitely wanted to have this morning was, we talk a lot about the granular, right? They got this guy in the 4th round. They got this guy in the 7th round. They signed this free agent. That's what the offseason's about. And then the draft comes and it's a free for all. Everybody's adding all kinds of players, and there's trades and signings. And then there's guys who signed, like the other day, like Tyler Boyd just went to the Titans. Now that we've seen almost all of the transactions and the dust has sort of settled on the transaction period, there'll be still a handful of moves from all these teams, but the heavy work, the heavy lifting's been done. And how do you, in the NFL, it's every year, it's like a reshuffle of the deck almost. And it's like the teams that, and then the schedule's coming out at 5:00 today, by the way, and we'll talk about that.
Wait. When did they announce that?
I just saw that this morning, that 5:00 this afternoon. 49er Web Zone, I think, has a.
Wait a second, Larry. I talked to somebody at the NFL yesterday that said it was next week, and then there was a report that it was next week. Did it change? Did the NFL get mad?
I thought I just read that it's coming out. Well, maybe I misread the date, but I thought it said 5:00 today.
I've got it for May 15th.
Okay, well, maybe I'm wrong. You're probably right. I'll trust your information over mine.
Well, I mean, I haven't looked this morning because I kind of thought it was over and done with. So
And the big thing to watch for there, in my opinion, is the Niners play Green Bay and Buffalo on the road, Tampa and
Right.
Miami on the road. If they get Tampa and Miami on the road in September and Green Bay and Buffalo on the road in December, that's a real tough schedule. If it's a reversed deal and they get Green Bay and Buffalo, before Thanksgiving, and they get, Miami and Tampa after Thanksgiving, then it's like, hey, you know what? Yeah, you got dealt a major break. So that's what I'm looking for. In addition to, are the Niners going to play the Vikings in London?
Yes.
I'm eager to see if that's going to happen, because that would be cool. And that would be a Viking home game with the Niners having, once again, the huge crowd advantage. So that could be another very positive element.
Can I ask you something about the schedule before you get?
Yeah.
Do you think it'd be beneficial to play at Tampa and at Miami weeks 1 and 2?
No.
I don't either, but somebody brought it up to me yesterday and they said, my first reaction was no. But somebody brought it up to me and they said, well, at least you don't have to travel out there twice, especially if you're also going to London and also going to Buffalo. My fear would be playing like 2 games, and maybe one of those games is a night game, but like, to me, the Dolphins game feels like a Sunday night game. But my first reaction was no, and then I started thinking about the travel. So what considering the
travel's a factor, but to me, the bigger factor is go look at those teams' records: Jacksonville, Miami, Tampa Bay in September. I mean, it's really, really tough to go there. Guys are cramping up. You're going with reserves in the fourth quarter because guys are cramping up. You're out here on the West Coast in no humidity, 75, 80, maybe 90, 95, maybe on a hot day. Then you get out there and it's 95 with oppressive humidity. And to me, it's major advantage for those Florida teams. I never bet against Miami, Jacksonville, or Tampa in week 1, 2, or 3 at home. I just don't, just because it's just teams fold up there.
If I could draft one game, this is how I said it yesterday. If you could draft one game and put it anywhere at any time, I think I would draft the Buffalo game to be in September. That'd be my first pick. You'd love to start early with Green Bay on the road, but you at least have you've got pretty good familiarity with Green Bay, right?
I might go Green Bay just because the way the incredible amount of the incredible amount of super young players that they have at the skill positions. They're older players run out of gas at the end of the year. They've got all these young guys. They were nearly impossible to beat last year in the playoffs with all their young weapons. I'd rather get their young weapon. Offensive football is so much about cohesion. I'd rather get them early and instead of late, because they're getting better every week. I mean, and Green Bay, literally, I don't know if it's because they're in Green Bay, there's no media, but they just get better. They get better as the season goes on.
Yeah, I like them. We've talked about it. I was a Jordan Love guy. Boy, my voice is cooperating mostly, but not always, not 100% of the time. I like them. They are a candidate for me to underdeliver a little bit this year. Last year, they were my candidate to overdeliver. We'll see. But I do like Jordan Love. But anyway, so that was one of the games. And then, yeah.
Oh, go ahead. No, what was the other one?
Do you think, so the Niners basically have 11 games that could end up in prime time, right?
Wow.
Their 3 divisional opponents, Miami, Green Bay, Buffalo. The Miami, Green Bay, Buffalo's 3 plus 3 is 6, the 3 divisional opponents, plus Dallas, the Jets, Kansas City, and the Lions. So actually that's 9. I think the Bears could end up in prime time also. Like the Bears, to me, an early season Monday night or Thursday night game. If you get the Bears early, they're going to have Caleb. They're the Bears. You know what I mean? Like, to me, the Bears are going to end up in prime time early in the year. You're not going to want to have them in prime time, like, unless you could flex them out in like November. But I do think the Bears could be an early primetime candidate. So what was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's 11 potential primetime games, assuming you don't play 2 NFC West primetime games, right? Then it would be 12.
Yeah.
So there's a ton of primetime opportunities here.
Well, to me also, and this is something that I've just been, kind of hit me in this last year. But I read that Warren Sharp article on which team had the rest advantage.
Yeah.
And like the Bears had a rest disadvantage, I think, most of the year, where like the Jets had like 13 different games. They had a rest advantage on their opponent. And it just seemed like the league was trying to force feed us Aaron Rodgers and the Jets in the playoffs. And to me, that is the one element of kind of like you see everything else in the newspaper or, online, Niners, Steelers, and the road teams on the bottom, home teams on the bottom, the road teams on top, and they give you the spread and they give you the over-under, and they tell you what time the game's at, and they tell you what weather it is. They tell you everything except for which team has the rest advantage. And now I'm when the Niners played the Bengals, they looked awful last year. They had they were minus 13 days of rest disadvantage for that game because of the way the schedule fell. So the rest situation is something that I always want to look at. Because it doesn't even itself out over the course of the year. It's scheduled the way it is, and it's just the way it is. So, and nobody ever talks about it, but rest in football means a lot.
Well, one more thing I'd add on schedule is the Niners play the Cowboys and Lions at home next year, right? Or this year. Obviously, you can't play those teams on Thanksgiving since you play at home against them and they play at home on Thanksgiving. But as our buddy John Dickinson texted me last night, he said, but you could play them the following week. They usually play, sometimes they play on a Thursday. One of those teams will play on a Thursday the following week. So they play on regular rest. And then they have a long week after that. So it feels a little too premium. Like Cowboys Niners on Amazon feels like the greatest game Amazon's ever had on Thursday Night Football. Niners Lions, but just something to keep in mind too.
Well, and then the other factor is, is it fair that the Niners keep having to play because they're kind of like the Warriors of the NFL and they're a major draw. They keep having to play on all the holidays. Is it fair to make the 49ers play every year on Christmas, every year on Thanksgiving, every year on, whatever, New Year's Day or whatever it is? It seems like every time there's, they play a lot.
Christmas on Wednesday this year. And Boomer Esiason said today, he suggested this morning on radio, WFAN, that the NFL could be intrigued by a Wednesday Christmas game on Netflix.
There you go. Well, they'll take their money. Have they finished the Brady roast yet? Oh my God, that thing
Brady roast is done. Yes,
that was brutal. All right, I want to get your your thoughts on before we finish up here, because we're only going for another 10 or 15 more minutes. The dust is cleared on all the transactions. Where are you as far as the Super Bowl race? Who do you like? I mean, let's just do the quick handicapping. The Chiefs, the Chiefs obviously are the champs. They added Xavier Worthy, so now they have a major speedster, and they probably added a few other guys that I'm not thinking of. But they lost Willie Gay in free agency. They did retain Chris Jones. Lost Snead. Baltimore is awesome, and they added Derrick Henry, which is a huge, huge, huge addition. Houston seems to be coming as far as their talent. They just signed a bunch of guys and, had a pretty good draft, and they just get deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's like they made that incredible trade for Deshaun Watson. And when you go look at at what they got back, it makes the Herschel Walker trade look like Dallas got nothing. I mean, they got so many picks and turned them into so many players in that, and then saved all that money and freshened up with a better younger quarterback in Stroud. And it's like the Texans off that trade are suddenly like went from 3 wins 2 years ago to look at them last year to watch the hell out for the Texans. That's how I kind of handicap the AFC. And I thought the Bengals had a very, very good draft. And to me, when they beat the Niners, I think Joe Burrow's got a couple Super Bowls coming in his future. So that's how I kind of like the AFC. It's Kansas City, Baltimore, Houston, Cincinnati. Is there some team I'm not thinking of that you think of as a contender?
The Chargers.
Chargers now with Harbaugh.
Yeah, I think the Chargers with Harbaugh they're gonna be in the AFC Championship game within the next 2 years, either this year or next year.
Yeah, I
The
agree.
Chargers are going to be in the AFC title game. I think the quarterback out of the AFC most likely to win a Super Bowl, other than Mahomes, is Burrow. So I agree with Cincinnati is high on my list. The Bengals and the Chargers did not make the playoffs last year. So we're gonna have to
Amazingly.
Yeah, amazingly. So Pittsburgh, would be a prime candidate to not make the playoffs again. But then
With
somebody
Russell
else.
Wilson now.
Miami, Cleveland, Houston, Kansas City, Buffalo, and Baltimore. Like if
Buffalo,
the Chargers,
okay, I didn't think about Buffalo. Yeah.
if the Chargers and the Bengals are going to make the playoffs this year, that means somebody out of that group I just named, Miami, Cleveland, Houston, Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, are not going to make the playoffs. And I think most people would just naturally say Cleveland, but they play defense. They got a good coach. So it's usually not that clean. Like, is Houston going to come back and win 13 games this year? They're going to win 10. They're going to win 9. I think I put Houston in the same category as Green Bay. If we looked at it like a trending chart, I think those two teams would be trending. Just popular opinion would say they are at the top of the trend chart. One of them probably is not going to fulfill expectations this year, is my prediction. It doesn't mean they won't be good, but it's just it almost felt like it's about to be too easy for Houston. So we'll see. But to me, the Chargers and the Bengals. I don't think it's out of the realm that you see the Chargers in the Super Bowl. I said they're going to be in the AFC Championship game. They could be in the Super Bowl within a couple.
No,
I
agree.
So
That's just
Harbaugh,
what
Jim does.
Exactly, and he does it quick. Okay, so let's flip the card over to the NFC. I think Dallas has taken a noticeable step back. They have no running back. They didn't draft well, in my opinion. I think they're the team that's taken a step back. I think the Commanders are taking a major step forward. I love Jaden Daniels. I love what they did in the offseason. They're in this sprint to getting better. I mean, they signed 20 players, veterans. Now, I don't know if they can make it all come together on how good of a coach is Quinn, so on and so forth. But I look at Philly. Philly's had a bad secondary last year. They added, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean and Saquon Barkley and C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I mean, they really added a ton. So I think Eagles are there. And then Detroit added DJ Reader in free agency and some big bodies on their defensive line and Marcus Davenport. So they bolstered it was Aiden Hutchinson and a bunch of question marks. Now you got DJ Reader, you got Marcus Davenport. And then they addressed the secondary. Like they signed like 4 or 5 different corners then they had drafted Terrion Arnold and Enos Rakestraw. So their big problem was the secondary. To me, Detroit is absolutely coming. And then how could you not think Green Bay's coming? I mean, they got those 2 fantastic all-world tight ends. They got some really, really good young receivers. They keep trying to bolster their offensive line. They added Edgerrin Cooper to their defense, who's a stud. He's a monster. They did lose Darnell Savage on the back end, so that's a significant loss. They lost Devondre Campbell. But, I mean, Green Bay
added Marshawn Lloyd, right?
Marshawn Lloyd. I mean, they added Josh Jacobs, and Xavier McKinney. So, I mean, they're in free agency. So, I mean, Green Bay, I think, is building really smartly. So is Detroit. Philly addressed their major needs, and though I do have this kind of bad vibe about Jalen Hurts and his leadership, and seems like there's some fractures there. But the Rams had a very, very good draft. So did Arizona. Seattle, I thought, had a very, very good draft as well. How do you handicap the NFC? To me, Dallas is the team taking the step back.
I think if I view it from an AFC standpoint, it is very clear to me which team I don't want to see in the Super Bowl.
Who's that?
The Detroit? 49ers. I think the 49ers stand out. Now, I think winning the NFC is going to be hard because I think the NFC is filled with teams that can beat you but can't win a Super Bowl. Like, to me, Detroit is in that category. Detroit, I don't believe will win a Super Bowl. I'm pro Jared Goff to a point, but I don't think he's beaten any of these AFC teams. I think Philly's window. I think Philly missed its best chance to win a championship because of their coach. I think their coach has a ceiling on him, and we've seen it. Now, Green Bay could become that. I think Green Bay, because of their coach and the potential with their quarterback, could become that. I think Dallas is going the wrong direction when you look at not just this offseason, but go look at what their playoff game was on yesterday on NFL Network. They get their asses kicked. They got their brains beat in, and they're going the wrong direction. So, I think it's pretty tough when you look at the 8 teams I'm looking at right here that did not make the playoffs out of the or the 9 teams, I guess, that didn't make the playoffs out of the NFC last year. Who is going to make the playoffs? I'll just rattle the teams off to you. Seahawks, Saints, Vikings, Bears, Falcons, Giants, football team, Commanders, Cardinals, Panthers. Somebody from that group probably, it's the way it works. Like there's always a little bit of shuffling. Is it
Seahawks
Atlanta?
and Commanders to me are the two
Okay.
arrow up. Yeah, I like John Schneider.
You think Dallas could miss the playoffs? You said you
probably,
like Philly and you like the Commanders.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. But I mean, Dallas seems like they're a powerful team. In some ways they can score points, but I just think that they're making bad decisions. I mean, Mozzie Smith 2 years ago, this year, Tyler Guyton. I don't think they're making great draft choices. They're not adding impact guys. They don't have any running backs. I think they've gone the wrong way who's their running back? I mean, do they have?
You're asking me?
I mean, they had Tony Pollard.
Right.
But he was the only guy. I mean, Rico Dowdell or something. I mean, they don't have. To me, I mean, the Niners have like 5 running backs. They don't have any running backs.
Oh, they re-signed Zeke.
Is that official? Has that happened? I know there's talk of it.
Oh, I thought he's on my our lad's depth chart here.
Is he?
No,
what's he at this point? So I don't know. I mean, I see Detroit, Green Bay as coming, and the Eagles and Niners kind of still
Larry,
there.
do you think the Lions can win a Super Bowl?
Yes, I do. I do, because look what they, Jared Goff's not tremendous, but look what he's surrounded by.
Yeah.
He's surrounded by maybe the best young offensive line in the game. Amon-Ra's a true number 1. Laporta is as good a receiving tight end as there is. Jahmyr Gibbs is just one of the greatest safety valve, big play weapons in the game today. They've got Montgomery. So offensively, they're just so complete. They got the home run go ball guy in Jameson Williams, and now they're building up their secondary and their D-line. Yeah.
It'll be interesting. Like, I think one of the things, and they'll play a lot of primetime games this year, so we'll get a chance to watch does Dan Campbell get a little better, right? Does he make more right decisions in the right big spots? He made a lot of really good decisions last year, but 1 or 2 glaring ones in the wrong game kind of sit with you. So it'll be interesting to see kind of just what they do. They're going to play in big games on big stages again this year.
Right. And they're not going to, I mean, I don't want to say they snuck up on people, but to some degree they did. And they won't this year. And also,
my question is, will they sneak up on the Niners? Will the Niners take them appropriately seriously?
Well, they should. They got absolutely pushed around on their home field, only to miraculously escape because of Dan Campbell's poor game management with a win. I mean, they got outplayed. They got outplayed on their home field in the NFC Championship game. Niners Nation is asking a question. Their question is, did the 49ers do enough this offseason to get over the hump? What do you think? I mean, they added Leonard Floyd. They changed out Armstead for Elliott and Collins. They added Devondre Campbell to try to compensate for the injury to Greenlaw. They added a couple alphas in their secondary, and Renardo Green and Malik Mustafa. Added nothing to the offensive line, which was their problem spot, other than maybe some depth down the road. Added nothing at tight end. Added a couple receivers and a couple backs. What do you think? Are they gonna get over the hump?
I think people aren't going to like this answer, but they already had enough to win a championship. They didn't, but they did have enough. So here's what I'll say. I think they needed to get better on the D line. You've talked about this a lot, Larry. You've been kind of driving this train since this time last year, actually. I think they did get better on their D line. I think one of the reasons I like the Ricky Pearsall pick, I think more than you, is that they have really good depth at receiver until Debo gets hurt, and they suddenly have no depth at receiver. The second one of those guys is unavailable, they're a guy short. So I do think they've raised the floor on their receiver group, which we know this based on recent history, based on the history of Debo, that one or two times this year they're going to need a higher floor with their receiver group. And then the other factor is that we don't talk about much is I think we have to expect that Brock Purdy's going to get a little better this year. He has to. I mean, this is a big year. Either he's the same guy, which is still a really good guy, or he gets a little bit better. And I talked a lot about them improving their offensive line in the draft. They didn't do it with a high pick. By the time we got to Thursday night, I was okay with it because I'd seen, these guys were going. I didn't want them to reach. When we think about like the big stories of camp, we mentioned the receivers. I think one of them will be, does Dominic Pooney look like a guy that could take snaps at right guard? So I would say those are the little things that are on my list of things they got better. They did better. They do better. Now you could still, one team can be better than another team. This team could be better than last year's team and lose before the NFC Championship game. Last year's team caught a couple breaks, one of them being in the conference championship game. I don't know that they will or they won't, but I do think they are still, to me, they were at the top of the NFC last year, almost got knocked off. I view them as at the top of the NFC again this year.
Two quick last questions, and then we're going to bolt. Camp battle that you're looking forward to the most. What's the most intriguing, exciting, hotly contested camp battle of 2024 in your mind?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I'll talk it out and you tell me if I'm missing an obvious one. I do think that like the receivers we've been talking about, one thing we didn't talk about, the more people I talk to about Cody Schrader, the more people love Cody Schrader, but people also love Isaac Guerendo and Kyle loves Elijah Mitchell. So maybe running back 3 is a really interesting one for them, right? Think about like Jordan Mason became a cult hero. Kind of everybody always wanted more Jordan Mason. You could barely get more Elijah Mitchell. So I'd put that on the list. I think, we'd probably have to talk about something on the D line, given all the additions on the D line.
I would say Jordan Elliott, Malik Collins for that number 1 defensive tackle spot next to Hargrave. And then who's going to be the first and second down defensive end? Is it Yatir Gross-Matos? Is it Beal? Is it Drake? Is it, is it somebody we're not thinking of?
Do you think is Devondre Campbell definitely the other linebacker?
Well, that was my last question was going to be to you. If somebody came to you and said, hey, you're Mr. Niner, you know a lot of what's going on with the Niners. Who's the guy to watch for this summer? If you ask me that question, I would say Jalen Graham. I think Jalen Graham is a great player who Steve Wilkes, for whatever reason, couldn't figure out how to utilize last year. I think Jalen Graham can run and hit and has instincts, and he's getting bigger, stronger, faster, smarter. If there's one guy that I would say watch for in camp this summer, I would say it's Jalen Graham, and I would predict that Jalen Graham is going to be damn good and will start next to Fred Warner over Devondre Campbell. He would be the second stacked linebacker. I know they want it to be Campbell, but I think Graham's going to take that job in the summer.
You're more optimistic than me about that, so we can revisit it. Maybe you'll be right. If that happens, it may be the single biggest. That could be the biggest thing that happens in Niner camp this year. Yeah. If that occurs, right? Because Dre Greenlaw leaves such a massive hole.
Right.
The other cornerback spot, they got to figure it out. They're not filling a hole. They're just still trying to figure it out. Can Dominic Pooney take some snaps at right guard? Well, even if he does, you're still going to have some, he's a rookie. So that'd be tough. Ricky Pearsall, is he going to be the guy? Matters more in 2025 than it does in 2024. So if what you said happens, you could argue it's the best possible thing of all the things we're talking about here that could happen to the 49ers, only rivaled by Renardo Green becoming a starting cornerback immediately. If that occurs, like the Niners have depth at the D-line. Whichever one of those guys wins the job, somebody else is going to play probably. They really don't have an answer with their third cornerback and with their other linebacker. So
I do love Darrell Luter.
Okay, well, maybe it's Darrell Luter. I'm just saying, like, if they establish truly a second linebacker or a third corner,
that'll be good.
You're giving them something they don't have right this second, right? You are that is kind of.
I'll add one more name. We started with it. We might as well finish with it. I think the guy on offense is Cowing, because I think when you have his speed, his ball skills, his production. And, I think he steps, I think he's the rare receiver that steps into the league and just produces right away. So I love Cowing to give them an element immediately. There's nothing that's going to slow that kid down. He's got speed. He's got hands. He's got, I know they like JJ and they've got other receivers. He's not going to get tons of routes, but he's going to find a way to get on the field and make plays, because that's what the guy does.
Practice camp last year we saw a lot of really obvious stuff when it came to the tight ends. Like, is Mason Pline going to be obviously an option for them? Because it was pretty obvious what was and was not an option last year, right? You throw the ball at tight end, they would catch it. It was pretty clear.
Today, in my mind, Mason Pline is going to be tight end too. But I do have respect for the improvement of year 1 to year 2, and I think Latu could be a totally different player this summer than he was last summer. And if he's not, he's going to be cut, or, he's not going to make the team, because balls just ricocheted off him all summer long last year. So,
yeah. So last year we had all the quarterback stuff, which I bathed my body in. But there's going to be there's some really intriguing storylines for the 49ers this offseason. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. I'll tell you the other one too, is like, who is the starter at free safety? Is that going to be Afanga? Is Afanga going to make it back from the ACL by week 1? Is that going to be Malik Mustafa? Is that going to be Renardo Green? Who's going to be the free safety, to me, is a major question in this defense.
Yeah. I mean, since you said that, this is more probably a regular season storyline than an off-season storyline, but what happens? Does Hufanga play in a way that forces the Niners to find a way to keep him? Did they draft Jair Brown to replace him, and Jair Brown plays in a way and Hufanga plays in a way that makes them comfortable just replacing Hufanga with Jair Brown? I don't know. And
also, like, in these mini camps, when they get on the field and actually start doing the work and seeing what these guys look like, do they go for the veteran free safety? Do they, though they drafted Mustafa, is it possible that Mustafa and Hufanga and Jair are all strong safeties, and they still need that free safety, and they sign, or trade for a free safety?
That'd be a bit of a mess, Larry.
It would, because you got George Odom. He's a special teamer.
That'd be a little bit of a mess. Small mess.
Maybe
a big mess. Could be. Some are calling it a big mess.
Yeah. No, so there's all kinds of things. I think Brandon Allen and Tanner Mordecai are going to battle this summer.
Oh, good.
I think Garendo's going to have a hard time making it over Schrader.
I think Mordecai's going to have a very extremely difficult time making it over Brandon Allen.
Yeah,
I like finding things to disagree with you about.
I know, but wait until you see Mordecai. You're going to sit there and be like, wait a second. Wait a second.
God. Okay. All right. I might have to bring GFF back. You know what? Might have to bring GFF back out for the third quarter, for the 7 throws combined between Brandon Allen and Tanner Mordecai.
That's right. And after Brock Purdy became something, if Mordecai shows anything, it'll be like the most covered story. And if the guy
That's true.
if he has one good practice, there'll be
Yeah.
like, there'll be highlights everywhere. People examine, look at the ball coming off of Mordecai's fingers. Look at the ball coming off of Brandon Allen's fingers. It's not the same. All right, I got to go. Otherwise, I'm going to be late to the Damon stream, which is
All right,
starting here in just a few minutes.
I gotta go.
What do you got cooking today? Anything big? You streaming later today? Or is this it?
I don't think so. What's today? Wednesday? I don't think
Wednesday.
I'm streaming later today. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, hey, thanks to you. Thanks to the sponsors. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Have a great rest of your day. Damon, Bruce, and I are going to talk a little Niner football and probably some other things as well coming up next. Guy, have a great day, man. Good to see you.
Thanks, Larry. You too.
Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for.